that they're changing my voice. This video is about the activities in Morgan Hill. It also covers most of the activities in Santa Clara County in general, right? San Jose, Gilroy, what have you. I use myself as an example here. One, because I know myself very well. Two, because I'm the most righteous person to ever live with a universal scale. Again, with a universal scale, not a specific religious scale or some kind of supremacist scale. It has to do with conveying focus, moral intensity in martial arts strikes and what I've achieved. Three, because, I'm a great example. And I need to use some example, and I'm a great example of why the culture is insufficient, because I'm not only somebody who's biracial, partially black, but I'm somebody who's different, who doesn't just immediately jump into the crowd. And if a society doesn't have options that are worthwhile, in a universal way, then that society's garbage. We'll get to that. So first, let's talk about 4 key points to help us understand why they're wrong and I'm right. Why universal pinpoint and moral precision is greater than American culture, is greater than white culture. Why that's the case. Greater than LGBT culture. So you might not agree with the first point, but you should agree with the second, third, and fourth point here. The first point's a little bit tricky, but it's not that tricky. If you think about it, you should see that I'm right. So point number 1. People who are not truly monotheistic, people in the churches basically aren't, mind you, they do not understand life worth. So people who are not truly monotheistic do not understand life worth. If you think about people who are atheists and Satanists, they tend to be weird. They tend to waste their lives. In fact, the word waste is a play on words for waste set, and set, to keep it simple, is another term for the devil. Or Horus is another term for Jesus, the Son of God, and set is another term for the devil. Set going in, set in you, set in your spirit. Set being a deity of the chaos and confusion, the principles of evil, what have you. And the word waste, again, is a play on words for way set. And it partially refers to not manning up, right? Was, E-T-E, effeminate, evil, E-V-I-L, shady, silly, emasculated, right? The E words. Goofy, dorky, silly, what have you. There's a lot of E words. Fatty, sloppy. So the T is the feminine suffix. And I often use the example of bat, where Ba means the soul, and Bat is a specific deity with it's a feminine deity in Egyptian mythology that's often said to be on the Narmer palette. It's a story for another day. But to keep the wordplay simple, the word waste is a play on words for waste set. If you are evil, you're wasting your life. If you're not very mature and very righteous, you're wasting your life. If you pretend to be very mature and very righteous like they do in churches, no offense to anyone, the churches need to hear it as well, that you're wasting your life. If you're a monk or you have a vow of celibacy, you're still wasting your life. God wants you to do what is right, and that isn't necessarily to abstain from sex. He wants you to come into the spirit of righteous intensity. So again, people who are not truly monotheistic, right? Their brains are responding to their way of thinking. Your conscious interacts with your brain, and your brain is saying, what the hell are you talking about? If you do not truly believe in God, it's like not believing that air is real, or that you need to eat or drink, or that gravity is real. Your brain is like, look, I've been here for a long time, buddy, in terms of, in the DNA of the human genome kind of thing. That your brain, your life forms are expressions that come from a long line of expressions. So there's a continuity. The brain is saying it's the continuity of something, of genes, of humans, what have you, of life. And it knows that there's a God. So when you tell it that you don't think that there's a God, it throws you off. And we can see that. The spectrum of people who do not believe in God is not as impressive as the spectrum of people that do. And so it is with, say, Buddhism. No offense to anybody. They may as well be worshiping the grass because they're not trying to be great. They're just trying to be. And when you just try to be instead of trying to be great, imagine if you apply that to running. Then you don't become great. Can you be the fastest runner without trying with all your heart to be the fastest runner? Without thinking about it and trying for it? No. That's a story for another day. You should be able to put that together from there. It's a long topic, but I'm sure that I'm right about that. Point number 2. To discount the fact that people who are truly monotheistic have lives that are much more worthwhile and respectable is to be very out of touch. So to not see the difference between Martin Luther King and someone who's like Bart Simpson or something is to be out of touch. To not see the difference between me and Marilyn Manson is to be out of touch. To say, hey, who are you to say one life is better? That's like you see the strongest person in the world and you see Harry Potter and you're saying to me, who are you to think that the strongest person in the world is stronger? Okay, if strength exists, then morality exists. Think about it. If any characteristics exists, then every logical characteristic exists. Point number 3. Even the agnostic person should know that the monotheistic person has a superior life, as the agnostic person knows that God is the source, is the most logical assumption with the information given the agnostic. So when you have to go on something, you're going to sit around at your house all day and say, I don't know, and just starve to death and die? That's stupid. So you have to commit to something. So if you commit to not knowing, you commit to being an idiot. If you commit to say you have faith, you can't prove it scientifically, but the evidence screams it, and as you study things carefully, you say there must be a God. Why is there a sun? Why do parrots seem to be trying to talk to us? And there's so many things like that. Why did martial arts come into being? Why did marijuana? Why did food? Why are there so many kinds of food? Why was the possibility for so many kinds of fruit? And on and on and on and on. Okay. And it seems deliberate. And when things are deliberate, those who believe in a God, and this goes way back before technology and sabotage and colonialism, the people who believed in the God were greater than the people who don't, in terms of the highest point of their spectrum. Point number 4. And we see the different points of the spectrum as well. A short righteous life is greater than a long conformist one. That's another reason we know. We see all kinds of people living lukewarm lives. They're just pathetic sheeple punks. So what do you call somebody who just follows the crowd and dies at 120 years old? A sheeple punk. What do you call Martin Luther King? Right? He's a martyr. He's a moral man. A hero. And his short life was greater than all these sheeple punks who live to be old sheeple. Who doesn't know that? Okay, now with these things in mind, you might say, what the hell does this have to do with what you can do in Santa Clara County? Because I have to explain to you why someone who actually gets life, who's looking at what's available to do, who's being punished for not being a punk, okay, every single day, mind you, why I'm right to not like these things. Now, some of these things, I put a dot by them in my notes, are things I don't like to do because of my condition. The vast majority of them I just don't like to do. So let's get into it. I have 33 things listed here that I don't like to do, and I have maybe 10 or so things that I like to do, and you'll see that they're why I'm bringing this up here. So let's just go through it. I don't like to bowl. I don't go fishing. I don't go to church. I don't go to the club. I don't go to the bar. I don't go wine tasting. I don't go to the library. I don't like bingo. I don't like bocce ball. I don't like water parks. I don't go hiking. I don't gamble. I don't go to political rallies, and I don't like them unless they are pinpointed right, and they never are. I don't golf. I don't go to music concerts, and that's partially because of my condition. I don't go to amusement parks, partially because of my condition. I don't watch TV because of my condition. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't surf. I don't skate. I don't like lame get-togethers, especially when they try to put their nose up at you and say, hey, I went to Harvard, and what have you been doing with your life when I'm doing the right thing, and they're just conformists. I don't go to the gym. Okay, I have my own workout, and it's very limited these days because of them crippling me partially. My condition has to do with loud sounds, has to do with being light sensitive. It has to do with being partially crippled. You know, it affects how I walk. It affects how I move. My spine is actually changed and calcified a little bit from them crippling me. When they flew over my house with a plane, they fumed me heavily and sent me to the doctors eventually. They partially crippled me for several days. Keep in mind, both my parents are doctors, so I didn't go to the hospital. I went to the doctor instead. And they blinded me for several days. So I was crawling on the ground blinded for several days, very light sensitive, and I had to go to the doctor. Okay. So I don't do any sort of art. On point 24, I don't go horseback riding. I don't go to sporting events. I don't go to movies because of my condition. I don't hang out at coffee houses and stuff like that. I don't go to malls because of my condition and the exact what goes on there. It's loud. There's a lot of lights and stuff like this. I don't go to parties because of my condition and because of me being shunned by people. I don't play sports because of my condition. I don't go dancing because of my condition. I don't go to gay or LGBT activities, and I don't even listen to music, much less go to music concerts, right? Okay. That's 33 things. I didn't choose it because of masonry or something. This just happened to be where it landed. Okay? So I don't do these things that I listed. Now, if you've been paying attention and you think about it, that is like pretty much everything there is to do almost. It's almost everything there is to do. So what do I do like to do? I like to do martial arts. My martial arts. I like to date attractive females, except for when I have a woman. I'm a one-woman man. I like the romantic activities. I like reading the Bible, especially to a beautiful woman, but not in the way that the churches do, not in their shallow way, but actually with meaning, with divine meaning that I've never seen anyone else do it that way. The closest thing to it is Martin Luther King. Okay. I like going to Santa Cruz to Westcliff and making videos there, reading scripture out loud, asking people questions. I like discussing things on the internet with an attractive female. I like watching religious videos on YouTube, which by attractive videos, which I have to watch with annotations because of my condition. So I can't just go watch something on TV because of my condition, but I can watch things on my phone after I make certain adjustments on my phone, and I watch it a certain way, and usually at a certain rate. And sometimes I have to stop it completely and just read the annotations to the finish instead of watching them, the person, while reading the subtitles. I go down to the transcripts. Give me the transcript, and I read it that way because of my condition. Okay. So I like doing my mild workout. I can't do much because of my condition. I like studying pictures of people, and I like exercising free speech. So if you look at these things, they all have to do with martial arts, doing God's work. Again, I basically don't do martial arts anymore because of my condition. But if I'm able to recover, I could beat anybody right now, even though I haven't been practicing, because the gap is so big. I'm the top martial artist ever possible, and people these days, they are, even in the Olympics, even, you name it, any tournament, they're just nowhere near my caliber. They're not cut from the same cloth. They don't even have the heart to actually serve God. They don't have the heart to transcend. They're just, Muppets doing martial arts, if you want to call it that. Okay, but all these things have to do with love, martial arts, God, talking to people, studying people. All the things that people do, right? They go bowling, go to the movies. I don't do those things. Now, when you look at it, everything I like doing, they interfere with. Think about that. They interfere with my martial arts. They cause women to shun me. They don't give me my rightful place. They keep me from romantic activities by what they're doing. Make it harder for me to get a female by causing me to have this condition and be partially crippled. Okay? Interferes. If I wanted to make love to a woman, it would be harder because of my condition. Not impossible, but they stop fuming and poisoning me every day. I'd certainly be better off. They've lowered my testosterone levels, which made my body more vulnerable to damage, which is part of how I'm still crippled after all these years, instead of my body recovering from that day to a much higher degree. They mess up my nutrition. But I don't really like going out to eat because of my condition and because of them fuming and poisoning me. There's a lot of things I can't eat, and they try to tell me what to eat, and that's a long story for another day. It goes back to diet and deity. But it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you. It's what comes out of your mouth from your heart that defiles you. And keep in mind that exercise, right? Exorcising a demon is like the word exercise. I'm doing martial arts with mind, body, soul, and spirit. People are full of demons because they're not having my martial arts spirit cleanse them of those demons. If you think about it, when you hear the top martial artist ever, the most righteous person ever talking to you and insisting that you do the right thing, and there's a certain spirit in the air, okay, it's pushing the demons inside of you out. And for those of you who are too dumb to realize that evil, the spirit of evil is real, even though you know the school spirit is real and the spirit of a nation and a military and on and on and on, but you don't believe in evil spirits. Okay, it changes their state of mind and their state of being one way or another to have the most righteous person ever, the top martial artist who I key up countless times going hi-ya in my own way, right? And different, hi-ya, various striking sounds. And that was projecting that righteousness into the universe, into the world, and that's part of why they keep me from martial arts. These people are fanatic occultists who want their pedo spirit, their fairy and satanic and sexual sadist and control spirit, freak spirit, to be out there. They want people to be in a low vibrational state, low energy, what have you. Kind of droopy, kind of Eeyore. Life sucks. And it's do it this way kind of thing. Go! They like to act like complete fucking bitches. You have some bitch, oh, Sally, and act like a bitch. Do they say it that way because they're white alone? No. They say it that way because white people, Jews, and LGBT people who worship the devil, those particular types, have formed their culture and their mentality. Government, ment meaning mind, as in the word mental. And that connects to the governing class. And old money, and the ancient serpent, the devil of old. Okay. So for those of you who are still struggling with understanding why I'm right here, let's look at Luke 12. In Luke 12, you have Luke 12:57, which might very well be my most favorite, my favorite scripture in the Bible. Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? So leading up to this, you had several things like the parable of the rich fool, do not worry, watchfulness, not peace but division, but in the section of interpreting the times, it says, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? Let's see what it says here. Now, there's a literal interpretation of the wind and the clouds, etc., and there's a figurative interpretation. Like Jeremiah 4:13, look, he advances like the clouds, his chariots come like a whirlwind. But I think the best interpretation here is a literal interpretation. Okay. So Luke 12:54, he said to the crowd, when you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say, it's going to rain. And it does. And when the south wind blows, you say, it's going to be hot. And it is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky. How is it that you don't know how to interpret this present time? Do you know how to interpret, you say, oh, it looks like it's going to rain. You say, oh, yeah, that person looks sad. Okay, oh, that's a dirty house. So how come you don't understand that you're living in an evil time? And you don't understand how to respond to it. So he says, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky. How is it you don't know how to interpret this present time? Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? And what he says next is also very important. He says, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? How to do the right thing, what to do. As you are going with your adversary to the magistrate, try hard to be reconciled on the way, or your adversary may drag you off to the judge, and the judge turn you over to the officer, and the officer throw you into prison. And this part, it's not literal. They're talking about me. Try to be reconciled with your adversary. Satan means adversary. You're in the spirit of the adversary, therefore you're my adversary. Okay? And God's adversary. And God and I are also the judge. So, as you see me in a certain human form, my soul is going to judge your soul. And you're not reconciled with me. And so when your soul comes into contact with my soul, when your flesh dies, okay, and of course you're being judged to some degree by the hardship that you have in life as a result of being evil, or you're trying to convince yourself you're enjoying your life and your eternal punishment's increasing because, you're trying to cheat the avenger, if you will. So to make a long story short, okay, you're supposed to be reconciled with me before you go to hell. And that's what he's talking about when he says he may drag you off to the judge and the judge turn you over to the officer and the officers throw you into prison. I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. Now, some people, they get their hopes up like a freaking worm. They get their hopes up like a dog. They think because it says until you have paid the last penny that they're somehow going to magically escape from hell. They are not. We know that from Matthew 25, where it says that the wicked go off to eternal punishment, eternal. We also know that from the discussion about the widow. I once knew a widow who gave a penny. He said, "What's a penny?" He bothered to emphasize that. A penny. And then they say, "What's a penny?" He said, "It's all she had." So you won't get out until you have paid all you have. Because that's what it's referring to when they say the last penny. What do you owe God when you've rebelled against him your whole life and you didn't do it? It takes to go to heaven. You go to hell. So you won't get out ever. All you have for eternity is what you're going to be paying. And that means eternal punishment. Again, Matthew 25, if you need it to be overkill. No offense to anyone, but your cultures are insufficient. They're not morally precise. The activities you have there are designed to prevent the righteous man from finding true love. The way you relate to each other, racial relations, social relations, class relations, gender relations, okay, they're conducive to evil, but they're not helpful when it comes to actually building a righteous society. And after my flesh dies, there'll be no way to build a righteous society. And that's because of your cultures. And just because my flesh dies doesn't mean you should just be evil to the best of your ability or conform. You should be standing firm to reduce your eternal punishment.